Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rachak Kodash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is the Book of Esther, a foreshadowing of things to come. This lesson pretty much is coming through the inspiration of the Bible reading that happened to come on. You know, I was watching some videos and videos were just popping up, and then the Book of Esther happened to come on, and I was going to change it because I was going to listen to something else, but the spirit was on me just to leave it. So as I was listening to it, the thought came to mind of things to come, you know, because when you read the Book of Esther is pretty much a tale of revenge, because whatever Haman, which was the Edomite, thought to do to Israel pretty much fell back on his own head. And that's a beautiful thing, you know. So this is what these devils plan on doing. They plan on pretty much having their way with us and doing whatever they want and having us in derision, having us all messed up, you know, and having us, you know, bow down to them and doing all type of manner of wickedness to us. But the Lord is going to step in and cause some type of divine intervention to happen. Let's go real quick to the book of Isaiah 59 and 19. And it says, "So shall they fear the name of the Lord from the west, and his glory from the rising of the sun. When the enemy shall come in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord shall lift up a standard against him." So whenever, you know, these devils plan on doing whatever they're going to do to us, the Lord is going to step in and do his thing. Now, the name of the lesson is the Book of Esther, a foreshadowing of things to come. Now, when you look up the word foreshadowing, the word foreshadow is be a warning or indication of a future event. And that's exactly what we read in the Book of Esther. You know, like I said, the Book of Esther, you could call it a Shalom, Yahweh Shah Brakathum. In the Book of Esther, you could pretty much call it a book of vengeance. You know, an account to where the Edomites thought to do us harm, but the Lord turned it to our good, you know, and pretty much turned whatever evil or wicked things they were going to do upon themselves. Like it says here in the book of Proverbs 21:18, it says, "The wicked shall be a ransom for the righteous, and the transgressor for the upright." So they've become so when we read the book of Esther, Haman became a ransom for the righteous, Mordecai. So Haman would represent the Edomites and Mordecai would represent the Israelites, and more so the elect of the nation of Israel, because in this time the Lord ain't going to deliver all of Israel. He's only going to deliver the elect. So let's look up this word ransom, which I've never done. Okay, the word kapar, I've read that before. Price of a life, ransom, bribe, asphalt, pitch, the henna plant, name of a plant, village. So we're dealing with the price of a life, ransom. All right, so a bribe could also be like a ransom. Let's look up this word ransom in the common dictionary. It says a sum of money or other payment demanded or paid for the release of a prisoner. So what happened? It says obtain the release of a prisoner by making a payment demanded. So pretty much what was the payment or what was the ransom? The ransom was Haman, his sons, and these Edomites being destroyed for what they planned to do to us. So once again, the book of Esther, a foreshadowing of things to come. The word foreshadow, be a warning or indication of a future event. When these devils come in and do what they're going to do, send their military, come in like madmen that they're going to come in as, Isaiah 59:19. So shall they fear the name of the Lord from the west, and his glory from the rising of the sun. When the enemy shall come in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord shall lift up a standard against him. And that's exactly what it's going to be like. So when we read Esther, the 6th chapter, in the 1st verse, it says the king plans to honor Mordecai. Now keep in mind that Haman built, gallows, for all Israel. Mordecai being the head, and then all the rest of Israel. So he was plotting and planning, and his wife and his boys and all of his friends gave him, they gave him counsel on what to do. So he's on his way, and this particular night, show you how the Lord operates. This particular night, the king was not able to sleep. Show you how the spirit works. This particular king could not sleep. So what did he do? He called for the books of the chronicles of the kings, to be brought to him and read to him, because he couldn't sleep. And they happened to read. It's not a coincidence. They just happened to read where, Mordecai had warned the king about the two eunuchs, I believe it was, that were plotting to kill the king, and he saved the king's life. But nothing was done to him because it was all set up for a later date. See? So pretty much that, what he did, the Lord caused that to happen so that later on, that could be extracted from his spiritual bank account. And in this case, Haman was on his way to the king to get permission from the king to destroy Mordecai and the Israelites. But then the whole thing just turned around on him. All right. So Job 33, and it wasn't a coincidence that the king that particular night couldn't sleep. The Lord made it that way, because everything fell in place perfectly. So when this time comes, everything's going to fall in place perfectly. Let's go real quick. Before we read that, there was a scripture that just came to mind. Damn, hope it comes back. Everything fell in place perfectly. There was nothing out of line. Everything worked the way it was supposed to. I can't think of it right now. Lord's will, it'll come back. But let's read this, Job 33:15, because it wasn't a coincidence that he couldn't sleep. Haman was on his way to ask for the head of Mordecai and the Israelites. He had built gallows to destroy Israel. And guess what? Those gallows that he built, turned around and ended up killing him, his sons, and his peoples. How great is that? Job 33:15. In a dream, in a vision of the night, when deep sleep falleth upon men and slumberings upon the bed, then he openeth the ears of men and sealeth their instructions. But the instructions of this king were being sealed because he wasn't able to sleep that night. So what happened? Whatever sleep he did get, the Lord sealed the instructions. He called for the people to come in, bring the chronicles of the kings, and they started reading, and they happened to just be reading in the part where Mordecai saved the king's life, and nothing was ever done for him. They didn't repay him because it was set up for this time. It says that he may withdraw man from his purpose and hide pride from man. He keepeth back his soul from the pit and his life from perishing by the sword. So when we go to the book of Esther 6:1, it says the king plans to honor Mordecai. So it says, on that night could not the king sleep, and he commanded to bring the book of the records of the chronicles, and they were read before the king. And it was found written that Mordecai had told of Bigthana and Teresh, two of the king's chamberlains, the keepers of the door, who sought to lay hands on the king Ahasuerus. And the king said, what honor and dignity hath been done to Mordecai for this? Then said the king's servants that ministered unto him, there is nothing done for him. And the king said, who was in the court? Now Haman was come into the outward court of the king's house to speak unto the king to hang Mordecai on the gallows that he had prepared. So this was premeditated. He already had everything set. So all he was doing was going to the king to get permission that particular morning. But that particular night, the king couldn't sleep. And everything was set up the way it was set up, because this was the book of Esther is a foreshadowing of things to come. When an enemy shall come in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord shall lift up a standard against him. And as we also read in the book of Proverbs 21 and 28, I'm sorry, 21 and 18, the wicked shall be a ransom for the righteous, and the transgressor for the upright. So it says, and the king's servant said unto him, behold, Haman standeth in the court. And the king said, let him come in. So Haman came in, and the king said unto him, what shall be done unto the man whom the king delighteth to honor? It says, now Haman thought in his heart, to whom would the king delight to honor more than myself? So he was full of himself. Because remember, the Heavenly Father was setting everything up. You know, out of all the people in that province, out of all of the chamberlains, all of the noblemen, all of the men that were great men of stature and honor, that were under the king, the only ones that were invited to this particular feast was the king, Haman, and Esther. So this guy was feeling himself, you know. So it says, and Haman answered the king, for the man whom the king delighteth to honor, let the royal apparel be brought, which the king useth to wear, and the horse that the king rideth upon, and the crown royal which is set upon his head. So pretty much he was saying, yeah, like in other words, he was about to be exalted to the clouds. No, he was just going all out because he's thinking in his mind, well, this is for me. So I'm going to go all out, right? It says, and let this apparel and horse be delivered to the hand of one of the king's most noble princes, that they may array the man with all whom the king delighteth to honor, and bring him on horseback through the street of the city, and proclaim before him, thus shall it be done to the man who the king delighteth to honor. So he's thinking that there's going to be a top nobleman, one of the king's top men, that's going to get the horseback. They're going to get all of the king's royal apparel, put it on Haman, put the crown on his head, put him on horseback, and walk down the street proclaiming, this is what's going to be done to the man whom the king is honored to do, to honor, right? So he's thinking in his mind, he's going to go through all that. Oh man, he was up on his high horse, so to speak, right? Haman must honor Mordecai. Then the king said unto Haman, make haste and take the apparel and the horse, as thou hast said, and do even so to Mordecai the Jew that sitteth at the king's gate. Let nothing fail of all that thou hast spoken. So not only does he have to take the horse, take the king's apparel, array Mordecai, have him sit up on the horse, walk before the horse, pulling the horse and Mordecai, and proclaiming, this is what the king, this is who the king delights to honor. The same individual that he hates, the same individual that would not give him the time of day, the same individual that would not bow to his will. This story is a very heavy story, you know, in comparison to what's happening now, what's about to happen. That's why the Spirit came on me to call it the book of Esther, a foreshadowing of things to come. What is a foreshadowing? Be a warning or indication of a future event. So now then took Haman the apparel and the horse, and arrayed Mordecai, and brought him on horseback through the street of the city, and proclaimed before him, thus shall it be done unto the man whom the king delighted to honor. So not only did he have to put all his clothing on Mordecai, put him on horseback, drag the horse with him on it, but then he had to tell the people everywhere as he was dragging them through the provinces that this is what who the king delights to honor. Total humiliation of Haman, where he thought that that was gonna be done to him. Proverbs 21:18, the wicked shall be a ransom for the righteous, and the transgressor for the upright. So this is a foreshadowing of things to come. Because Esau, in his mind, they're already thinking what they're going to do. The book of Wisdom of Solomon, the 3rd chapter, I believe it is. You know, let us examine him with cruelty and all that, torture and all that, to see if he's really the son of the Most High or whatever the case may be. This is what they plan on doing. But the Most High is going to throw a monkey wrench in there. You know, he's going to throw the Mordecai effect in there. It says, and Mordecai came again to the king's gate, but Haman hasted to his house mourning and having his head covered. He was ashamed. He was ashamed. because he just knew that this was going to be him being paraded through the streets, of Ahasuerus' palace and of his realm, of his great empire. And he just knew that he was going to be lauded and praised, as the top man in that whole realm, in that whole kingdom that the king honored. No, not in my house. Inside joke. It says, and Haman told Zeresh his wife and all his friends everything that had befallen him. Then said his wise men and Zeresh his wife unto him, if Mordecai be of the seed of the Jews, before whom thou hast begun to fall, thou shalt not prevail against him, but shalt surely fall before him. So the spirit came on these devils to tell this devil that he was doomed. Total humiliation. The total opposite happened to him than what he thought to do to our forefathers. All right? It says, and while they were yet talking with him, came the king's chamberlains and hasted to bring Haman unto the banquet that Esther had prepared. So now he's humiliated. His head is down. His head was covered. He was ashamed. He's a broken man. He's a broken vessel of what he used to be, And now he's coming to the banquet, not knowing what to expect. Just totally humiliated, right? Now, so that's the one, okay. Esther's plea, Esther 7:1. So the king and Haman came to banquet with Esther the queen. And the king said again unto Esther on the second day at the banquet of wine, what is thy petition, Queen Esther? So this is something that's happening in succession. And it shall be granted thee, and what is thy request? And it shall be performed, even to the half of the kingdom. Then Esther the queen answered and said, if I have found favor in thy sight, O king, and if it please the king, let my life be given at my petition, and my people at my request. For we are sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be slain, and to perish. Because remember, this guy had already built the gallows to do this wicked deed. But if we had been sold for bondmen and bondwomen, I had held my tongue, although the enemy could not countervail the king's damage. Then the king Ahasuerus answered and said unto Esther the queen, who is he? And where is he that durst presume in his heart to do so? The presume part was an inside joke in the movie that we watched years ago. You presume to demote me? There's no demotion. So it says, and Esther said, the adversary and enemy is this wicked Haman. Salaki, I got to get dramatic with it. It said, then Haman was afraid before the king and the queen. Haman is hanged. Remember, Proverbs 21:18, the wicked shall be a ransom for the righteous. It says, and the king, arising from the banquet of wine in his wrath, went into the palace garden. Because what's going to go down is these diablos, these devils, right? They're going to be sitting down, or like I said, when they're about to eat, they're going to be sitting down, salivating, ready to lick their chops, and then the Lord's going to lower the boom on their ass. Job 5:12, he disappointed the devices of the crafty so that their hands could not perform their enterprise. He taketh the wise in their own craftiness, and the counsel of the froward is carried headlong. They meet with darkness in the daytime and grope in the noonday as in the night. But he saveth the poor from the sword, from their mouth, and from the hand of the mighty. So what's going to happen is this in turn is going to fall upon them. Because this is going to be the ultimate thing that bring their demise, their destruction. Because when they push their MOTB, which is their RFID microchip, that's when, everything is going to move fast. And the Lord said he's going to lift up a standard against these devils. All right? So the poor hath hope, and iniquity stoppeth her mouth. All right? So now let's go back. So Esther 7:7, and the king arising from the banquet of wine in his wrath went into the palace garden, and Haman stood up to make request for his life to Esther the queen. So pretty much he's begging Esther, for his life. For he saw that there was evil determined against him by the king. Yeah, but that's what you wanted to do to Haman and to the Jews. The scripture says, since thou hast not hated blood, even blood shall pursue thee. That's right. the brother Yahweh, the Maccabees bloodline of David 144, fumbled in the end zone. That's right. He fumbled in the end zone. Haman fumbled, man. That was terrible. He ran to the wrong end zone. For he saw that there was evil determined against him by the king. So the king was about to fuck his ass up. But he knew that Queen Esther held sway over the king because he knew that she held a special place in the king's heart. So he's begging her. So he's falling upon the couch where the queen was at, begging her, crying, pleading with her. Then the king returned out of the palace garden into the palace of the banquet of wine, and Haman was fallen upon the bed wherein Esther was. Then said the king, will he force the queen also before me in the house? As the word went out of the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face. They put a face. They put they probably put like a hoodie or something, or a bag or something over his head. So he went from one bad situation to the next bad situation, to the next bad situation, to the next bad situation. Why? Because the wicked shall be a ransom for the righteous. So what he thought to do to Haman and the Israelites back then is what Esau's planning to do right now in these times. But when they're about to fill their belly, the Lord shall rain upon him, while he is eating. So the book of Esther is a foreshadowing of things to come. Esther 7 and 9. And Harbona, one of the chamberlains, said before the king, behold also the gallows 50 cubits high, which Haman had made for Mordecai, who had spoken good for the king, standeth in the house of Haman. Then the king said, hang him thereon. So what happened? The wicked Edomite was made a ransom for the righteous Israelite. So they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. Then was the king's wrath pacified. So the book of Esther is a foreshadowing of things to come. You could read the 8th chapter. I'm just going to go to the 9th chapter. Now in the 12th month, that is the month Adar, on the 13th day of the same, when I'm trying to find the... I'll read a few verses. When the king's commandment and his decree drew near to put in execution in the day that the enemies of the Jews hoped to have power over them, see? It turned to their good, and it turned to Esau bad for them. Though it was turned to the contrary, that the Jews had ruled over them that hated them. Woo! The Jews gathered themselves together in their cities throughout all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus to lay hand on such as sought their hurt. And no man could withstand them, for the fear of them fell upon all people. And that's why it says, and fear fell upon them which saw them, because the Lord is setting his people back up into order. And these devils are nervous, but they think that they have a fighting chance to destroy us. But the Lord is going to jack them up, break that spell, break their agenda, and then they're going to go in captivity. Hardcore slavery. And all the rulers of the provinces and the lieutenants and the deputies and officers of the king helped the Jews, because the fear of Mordecai fell upon them, because the Lord was elevating Jake back then. It says, for Mordecai was great in the king's house, and his fame went out throughout all the provinces. Did not the scripture say that I will get them praise and fame in all the lands where they were put to shame? For Mordecai was great in the king's house, and his fame went out throughout all the provinces. For this man Mordecai waxed greater and greater. And when the kingdom is established, all nations are going to flow to us to learn of the Lord's ways, because of the magnificence that's going to be established. You know, that great honor that the Lord is going to bestow upon us once again. Our rightful position as the rightful rulers of the universe. Man. Thus the Jews smote all their enemies with the stroke of the sword, and slaughter and destruction, and did what they would unto those that hated them. Yeah. because the wicked shall be a ransom for the righteous. You know, and in the kingdom of heaven, they're going to be dealt with. They're going to be severely dealt with. Inside joke, but it's true. And in Shushan, the palace, the Jews slew and destroyed 500 men because there was a big plot that was going on with that devil Haman and his honky kind. It says, and Parshandatha and Dalphon and Aspatha and Paratha and Adalia and Aridatha and Parmashta and Arisai and Aridal and Vajersatha. The 10 sons of Haman, the son of Hamadatha, the enemy of the Jews, slew they, but on the spoil they laid not their hands. So pretty much they ended up being destroyed, you know, instead of the Israelites. On that day, the number of those that were slain in Shushan palace was brought before the king, and the king said unto Esther the queen, the Jews have slain and destroyed 500 men in Shushan the palace, and the 10 sons of Haman, what have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now what is thy petition? And it shall be granted thee, or what is thy request further? And it shall be done. Then said Esther, if it please the king, let it be granted to the Jews which are in Shushan to do tomorrow also according to this day's decree, and let Haman's 10 sons be hanged upon the gallows. And the king commanded it so to be done, and the decree was given at Shushan, and they hanged Haman's 10 sons. That's right. And they actually killed more of those devils, you know? So the book of Esther is a foreshadowing of things to come. All right. So with that, I pray that you brothers have been edified. To the next time I say shalom. Get ready. Be prepared for what's coming. Yep, the 29th scroll, the 6th verse. That's right. Beware the beast man. Shalom.